Most people do not fail because their dreams are impossible. They fail because their routine is weak. They want a better life, but they do not want better habits. They want confidence, but they avoid practice. They want success, but they disappear the moment discipline becomes boring, the moment effort stops feeling exciting and starts feeling heavy. The truth is simple, even if it is hard to accept. One focused hour every day can do what years of wishing can never do. 1 hour may look small. It may feel useless in the beginning. Nobody may clap for you. Nobody may even notice your effort. But slowly, silently, that 1 hour begins to change your mind, your words, your habits, and finally your destiny. My name is Xylos Tales, and this is the story of a poor cleaner who had nothing but tired hands, a silent dream, and 1 quiet hour every day. An hour that slowly, station by station, changed his entire life. In a busy coastal city of Portugal, there lived a poor cleaner named Lucas. His story is not about luck. It is not about a miracle. It is about consistency. And if you listen carefully, this story may also help you with your own motivation, your own discipline, and maybe your own English. Lucas was 29 years old, but life had already made him look much older. There were lines under his eyes that should not belong to a man his age. There was a heaviness in his shoulders that came not from heavy boxes, but from heavy years. Every night, while most people slept peacefully in warm rooms, Lucas cleaned the floors of a large train station near the city center. The station was alive during the day. Businessmen ran with coffee cups in their hands, talking loudly into phones. Tourists pulled heavy suitcases across the platforms, taking photos of the old architecture. Students laughed together while waiting for trains, sharing earphones, sharing jokes, sharing a kind of carelessness that Lucas had almost forgotten existed. But after midnight, the same station became something else entirely. Quiet, cold, lonely. The laughter disappeared. The lights buzzed instead of sparkled. And that was when Lucas's real work began. He picked up empty bottles, old newspapers, food wrappers, and broken tickets. He washed dirty floors that thousands of careless feet had walked across. He cleaned benches where strangers had slept, wrapped in thin coats, escaping the cold for a few hours. His uniform was faded gray, his shoes were cracked at the edges, and his hands were rough and dry from chemicals and cold water. Every morning when his shift ended, he walked back to his small rented room through narrow, half-asleep streets. The city was waking up around him, but inside, Lucas felt like his own life was standing completely still. He worked hard. He had always worked hard, but nothing seemed to change. Some people looked straight through him, as if he were made of glass. Some treated him as though a man with a mop could not possibly have a mind, a memory, or a dream. Young men sometimes laughed when they saw him bent over a dirty floor. Rich travelers sometimes dropped their trash a few inches from his feet without so much as a glance, let alone an apology. Lucas never answered back. He simply lowered his eyes and kept moving the mop in slow, even strokes. But quietly, in the parts of himself nobody could see, something inside him was cracking. One winter night, heavy rain hammered against the station's glass roof. The platforms were almost empty, the rain turning every footstep into an echo. Lucas was cleaning near a small bookstore tucked into a corner of the station when he saw an old woman struggling to lift a heavy box of books onto a high shelf. Her name was Elena. She owned the little bookstore. She was nearly 70 years old, with silver hair pulled back neatly, soft, tired eyes, and a calm voice that seemed to belong to a much quieter world than the one rushing past her door. Lucas dropped his mop without thinking and hurried over. "Let me help you with that," he said, lifting the box before she could protest. "Thank you," Elena said gently, watching him set it down with care. "You work here every night, don't you?" Lucas nodded. "Yes, madam, every night." She studied his face for a moment longer than was comfortable. "You look tired," she said, not as an insult, as something closer to concern. Lucas gave a small, tired laugh. Tired people are common in this world, madam. Maybe, Elena said, but tired and defeated are not the same thing. You don't look defeated yet. She paused, then asked, almost casually, "Do you read?" Lucas almost laughed out loud. "Read. I barely survive. Books are for people with time. I have none." Elena did not smile this time. She looked directly into his eyes, the way someone looks at you when they are about to say something that matters. "No, Lucas," she said quietly. "Books are not for people with time. Books are for people who want their mind to escape before their life does." Those words landed somewhere deep in his chest and stayed there. Before Lucas could leave, Elena reached up to a shelf and pulled down a small, used book, old, with a faded blue cover and yellowed pages that smelled of dust and other people's lives. "I cannot pay for this," Lucas said, stepping back. "Then pay with something better than money," Elena said. "Pay with consistency. Read for 1 quiet hour every day. Not 3 hours. Not the whole book in one desperate night. Just 1 honest hour." Lucas frowned, confused. "How can 1 hour change anything, madam? My life is broken in 100 places. 1 hour is nothing against that." Elena smiled, the soft, patient smile of someone who has lived long enough to know things that cannot be explained quickly. "A train does not reach another country in 1 jump, Lucas. It moves station by station, slowly, through the dark, through the cold, until one morning it arrives somewhere new. A life changes the same way, step by step, hour by hour, not all at once." That morning, Lucas carried the book home like it was something fragile. He was exhausted. His back ached. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. But before lying down on his thin mattress, he opened the first page. The first sentence said, "A poor routine can destroy a rich dream." Lucas stopped breathing for a second. That sentence felt like someone had reached directly into his chest and spoken to the most honest part of him. For years, he had blamed life, money, bad luck, unfair people, a broken system. But for the first time, he asked himself a question that hurt more than any insult ever had. What do I actually do every single day that could change my future? The answer, when he was brave enough to face it, was almost nothing. He worked, he slept, he complained silently inside his own head. He worried about money he didn't have. And then he repeated the exact same day again, like a man walking in circles and calling it a journey. So that night, lying alone in a cold room with rain still tapping on the window, Lucas made a quiet promise to no one but himself. 1 honest hour, every day, no matter what. At first it was brutally difficult. His English was weak and clumsy. He read slowly, his finger moving under each line like a child learning the alphabet. Some words confused him completely. Some nights, he read the same paragraph 4 or 5 times before it made any sense. Some nights, he was so exhausted that the book actually slipped from his fingers and fell onto his chest while he was still trying to finish a sentence. But he did not stop. Every morning, after his shift, instead of collapsing straight into sleep, Lucas gave 1 hour to his future. He read books that Elena gave him. He learned simple English sentences, repeating them under his breath like prayers. He wrote new words into a small, cheap notebook with a cracked cover. He listened to English audio lessons on an old phone with a broken screen. He practiced speaking quietly to the empty room, even when there was nobody there to hear him, nobody to correct him, nobody to believe in him except himself. At the station, people began to notice the notebook tucked into his back pocket. One cleaner laughed and said, "Look at him. Lucas thinks he's going to become a businessman now." Another added, "Books won't clean your room, Lucas. Books won't pay your rent." Some of his co-workers openly mocked his little notebook, calling him the professor in a tone that was not a compliment. Some called him crazy. Lucas stayed silent through all of it, because somewhere along the way, he had started to understand something important, something almost nobody teaches you. People who waste their own time often feel threatened by people who are finally learning to protect theirs. Months passed. Lucas did not become successful overnight. His salary did not magically increase. Nobody arrived to rescue him from his life. But something deeper, something quieter, had begun shifting underneath the surface. His mind grew calmer. He stopped reacting with anger when people were cruel. He started speaking more carefully, more respectfully, to others and to himself. He started saving a small, almost embarrassing amount of money every week. He learned how to plan his day instead of simply surviving it. He learned how to hold his emotions instead of being thrown around by them. He learned slowly how to speak to people, any people, with quiet confidence instead of quiet fear. One afternoon, a tourist from Canada lost her wallet somewhere in the station. Her train was leaving in minutes, and panic was rising in her voice as she searched frantically through her bags. Lucas walked over and offered to help. Because of all those tired, lonely hours of practice, he was able to speak to her clearly, calmly, without stumbling over his words. "Please, don't worry," he said, kneeling to check beneath a row of benches. "We will check the waiting area first. Breathe. We have time." After 10 long minutes, Lucas found the wallet wedged beneath a bench leg. The woman pressed both hands to her chest in relief. "Thank you," she said, almost in tears. "Thank you so much." Then she paused, looking at him properly for the first time. "Your English is very good." Lucas smiled. A real smile. The kind that reaches the eyes. Nobody had ever said those words to him before. That one small compliment gave him more energy than any paycheck ever had. After that day, he practiced even harder, as if something inside him had finally been given proof that the hour was working. A year passed. Slowly, Lucas became known around the station, not as the cleaner, but as the cleaner who spoke kindly, who helped lost travelers, who stayed calm when others panicked. Elena, the bookstore owner, often spoke with him now about books, about business, about life itself. One quiet morning, she said to him, "Lucas, you don't think like a helpless man anymore." "Because I stopped feeding my helpless thoughts," he replied simply. Elena's eyes softened with something like pride. "Then maybe," she said, "it is time to use what you have learned." With her gentle guidance, Lucas began a small service near the station during his free afternoons. He helped tourists understand confusing train routes, translated basic signs, pointed travelers toward honest local restaurants instead of overpriced tourist traps. At first, only a handful of people came, then a few more. Then word began to spread. He did not quit his cleaning job immediately. He was too careful, too aware of how fragile everything still was. He saved money. He improved slowly, deliberately. And every single day, the same 1-hour habit continued, unbroken, like a heartbeat underneath everything else. He studied customer service. He studied basic communication. He studied simple business principles. He studied English. He studied people, how they spoke, what they feared, what made them trust a stranger in a worn-out uniform. 2 years after that rainy night in the bookstore, Lucas opened a small information and coffee kiosk near the station entrance. It was simple, clean, warm, friendly. Travelers could buy a cup of coffee, ask for directions, charge a dead phone, and get help in clear, patient English. Some of the very people who had once laughed at him now stood in line at his kiosk, not even recognizing the tired cleaner they used to mock. But Lucas never let pride creep into his heart. He remembered the cold floors beneath his knees. He remembered the careless insults. He remembered the long nights when absolutely nobody saw his struggle. And most of all, he remembered the old blue book that had quietly started everything. One evening, while closing up the kiosk, Lucas noticed a young cleaner sitting alone near an empty platform, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on nothing. The boy looked tired and hollow, exactly the way Lucas once did. Lucas poured a second cup of coffee and walked over. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. The boy looked up, surprised that anyone had noticed him at all. "What is your name?" Lucas asked gently, handing him the cup. "Marco," the boy said quietly, wrapping both hands around the warm cup like it was the only kind thing that had happened to him all day. "You look worried, Marco." Marco let out a long, tired sigh, the kind that carries the weight of many silent nights. "I feel stuck," he admitted. "I work every single day, but my life isn't moving anywhere. I clean, I sleep, I clean again. It feels like I'm disappearing a little more each night." Lucas looked out across the empty platform, remembering exactly that feeling, remembering it in his bones. "I know that feeling better than you think," he said softly. "Let me ask you something honest, Marco. How much time do you give, every single day, to the person you actually want to become?" Marco opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no answer. "Most people," Lucas continued, his voice steady but warm, "give hours to fear, hours to scrolling through other people's lives, hours to complaining about a life they refuse to change. But they don't give even one focused hour to their own future. Not because they're lazy, Marco, because nobody ever told them that 1 hour was enough to begin with." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small worn book with a faded blue cover and yellowed pages. The very same book Elena had given him, years and years ago, on a rainy night exactly like the memory now playing behind his eyes. He placed it gently in Marco's hands. "Read for 1 quiet hour, every day," Lucas said. "Don't wait for motivation to find you. It rarely shows up on time. Don't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't exist. Start tired, start small. Start tonight, even if your hands are shaking and your eyes are heavy." Marco turned the old book over in his hands, almost afraid to believe it could matter. "Can 1 hour really change a life?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucas looked across the station, at the lights reflecting on the very floor he had once scrubbed clean every single night for years. Then he said slowly, as if handing over the most important truth he owned, "1 hour daily will not change your life in 1 day, Marco. But it will change the person who is living your life. And when that person finally changes, quietly, patiently, 1 hour at a time, everything around him eventually changes too." The station fell silent around them. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. A train arrived slowly from another city, carrying tired passengers, half-finished dreams, and stories nobody else would ever know. Lucas watched Marco hold the book a little tighter, a small flicker of hope returning to his tired eyes. And in that exact moment, standing where he had once felt completely invisible, Lucas finally understood the deepest lesson of his entire life. Your future is not built in one emotional decision made on a good day. It is built in the small, unglamorous promises you keep when absolutely nobody is watching. It is built when you study after an exhausting shift. It is built when you practice with weak, clumsy skills because that's the only kind you have right now. It is built when you keep going after people laugh at your notebook. It is built when you choose discipline over the easier comfort of excuses. Success does not always begin with money, talent, or the perfect opportunity arriving at the perfect time. Sometimes it begins with 1 quiet hour, 1 exhausted person, 1 small borrowed book, and 1 stubborn decision not to quit. So if you feel stuck today, truly stuck, the kind of stuck that keeps you awake at night, remember Lucas. You do not need to rebuild your entire life tonight. You don't need a miracle, a rescue, or a perfect plan. You only need to give 1 honest hour to your future. 1 hour to learn. 1 hour to practice. 1 hour to grow just slightly stronger than the version of you that woke up this morning. 1 hour to become stronger than your own excuses. Because small actions, repeated daily without applause, can quietly defeat years of failure that felt permanent. And maybe, years from now, you will look back at this exact moment, this video, this story, this sentence, and realize that your entire life changed because of 1 simple habit you finally refused to break. If this story touched something in you, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and write in the comments, 1 hour daily. Share this story with someone who needs a little hope today. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting on a cold platform, exactly like Marco, just waiting for someone to hand them a book.